Hello, everyone. It has been a while since Callie and I have been on for a show. I think this is our first show for the year. So we have been busy in Fresno, and then we came home and had a couple of days of rest, and now we're back for 2022. We have an awesome show for you guys today. So if you're just joining us, welcome. If you have been on with us for the last 30 seconds, please make sure to say hi. Let us know where you're watching us from. Also, please help share. We have an awesome show for you guys today. I know it's the beginning of the year. We're all kind of thinking about whether we want to go back to work or not. Do we want to stay in the same career field? And so today is the day we are going to be talking with an expert who has been part of that team of hiring and recruiting and sorting out all those recruitments and applications. And so hopefully hopefully you guys can glean something from our conversation today and utilize that while you search for a new job or just to learn something new. June Chua Yang says, I'm watching from my treadmill. Great. That's awesome.
That's like two New Year's resolutions in one, right?
You know what's so funny is that my mother-in-law actually wanted us to put a TV in the garage because that's kind of where our my husband and I we started to build our own at-home gym, and she wants us to put a TV in there. So I'm glad that you're watching us from your phone. Hopefully, you can attach it to your if you have a TV in your gym that you're watching us from there too. But thank you so much for tuning in while you're working out. We really appreciate that. Again, I see that there's a lot more of you on now. So if you're just joining us, please make sure you say hi. Let us know where you're watching us from. And again, like I said, we have an awesome show today for you guys. So please make sure you share, tune in, engage with us, ask questions. Our guest is someone who's really an expert and wanting to share her knowledge. So this is a great opportunity for you guys to ask some questions if you're interested in knowing what the other end is going through when you apply for a job. So we've got TM Wood from Washington. Hello. Marina Zhang from Seattle. Tua Vang from Oklahoma. Oh my goodness. Hello. How are you? We've got Gao Hua from Wisconsin. Hi, Gal. How are you? Tony Yang from Portland, Oregon. Tony, why you be playing? You was from here. You're more than welcome to move here, though. Just make sure you continue to work from home so our traffic doesn't get bad. It was starting to get pretty bad. Denise from Portland. Hi, Denise. Hope you're doing good. We've got Jennifer from Sacramento in the house. Thank you so much, people from Sacramento. You guys are, that's kind of like one of our bigger Hmong populated areas, but you guys tune in quite often. So thank you guys so much. Honey June from South Korea. How's the weather down there? I've been really wanting to visit there too. Luncy, hi, how are you? Okay, Kelly, are you almost ready?
Almost.
Almost. All right. So how many of you guys actually made it out to the Fresno New Year and did not come see us? We were there for 2 days. We met so many people, though.
We are hurt.
I know, but we met so many people, and it was so much fun. We've got Thea from Atlanta. Hi, Thea. Thank you for tuning in. We've got Joyce from Wisconsin. Sang from Fresno. Hi, Sang. How are you? All right. So,
and please do share this video and tag a friend who is looking for a new job or looking to transition upwards or laterally. We think that this message is going to be great for anybody looking to make that move. So please do share.
Yeah, we've got Sylvia from Sacramento saying hi, and Maishua Yang saying Yajunga. Hi, Maishua. Okay, so again, today's show is going to be an awesome one. I mean, I totally completely skipped over introductions, but I'm Olivia. I'm your co-host.
I'm Callie.
Awesome. I think I just kind of miss it sometimes because I say hi to everybody and then we just go straight in. So, okay. So today again, we have an amazing show. Obviously, if you are interested in, like Kelly said, looking for a new job or just advancement or lateral movement, this is the show for you. So tag a friend, tune in. We've got an expert here who's going to be sharing a wealth of knowledge. And I think anytime anyone is willing to share their experience, and it's just amazing to kind of hear and learn from that. So
we're already getting comments. I want to hang when I grow up.
yes.
Pang is the best. Even his spelling. Yes, Tony, your spelling. You definitely.
We knew what he was trying to say. So without
Yes.
further ado, Kelly, let's have you introduce her, get her on, and let's get these questions going.
Absolutely. So Pang Heu has over 20 years of experience managing teams in private to large billion-dollar organizations. She's consulted to help business scale. Previously, she served as an executive VP of human resources, including recruiting and selection, talent management, employee relations, risk management, compliance, benefits, training. And so the whole wide range of everything that we are really looking forward to hearing today. Her passion is personal development, leadership, inspiring, and helping others to become the best versions of themselves. So I'm going to bring her right on.
Hi there, everyone.
Hello.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. I can't believe it's already 2022. It's so
crazy. I know, it's crazy.
And it's like the middle of it's technically, almost feels like the end of January already. It just flies by. So Pang, you are from Alabama, correct?
Yeah, well, I'm actually from Georgia, but I've spent the last previous years living in Alabama. I'm like the only Hmong person probably that lives there.
I know, I can hear a little bit of your twang, so I love more Southern Hmong people. I love it.
There's definitely a twang.
All right, so we are so grateful to have you here today. I know that with the new year comes people, wanting to level up their life and, get into new jobs or look to progress in the field. And I think that it's with the great resignation and with just lots and lots of openings, I feel like this is a great time to really have this conversation. And so talking about just like before you can even land an interview, what should people be doing to even get their foot in the door?
So this is kind of the way that I think about interviews. Okay, so when I think about interviews, I really think about it in three parts, right? So it's before the interview, right? There's preparation, and then there's during the interview, and then there's also after the interview. And I think the way that you really stand out, and it's really one of my favorite quotes, and I'm sure everybody has heard it, but luck is really when opportunity meets design, right? So there's nothing really like preparing for your future, planning for your future, and working hard, so that you can have the right skill sets to get the dream job that you really want. So I like to give advice that's very practical and hopefully easy to remember. So for me, there's really like 5 really key factors when it comes to interviewing and how you stand out and how you get your foot in the door. And I'll kind of touch on these, but I'm going to call them the 5 C's. Okay. I just made this up. So there's really 5 C's that I believe really helps people no matter what phase of the interview that you're in, but I'll kind of go over them. And that is 1, connection, right? And then 2 is competence. Can you do the job? And then 3 is just being very confident. And then 4 is communication, and 5 is character. It's do you have the character for that role, right? And those are things that you really have to develop over time. So we'll touch on the first question that you had, which is really, how do you get your foot in the door? Whenever the best jobs that I've had, how I started my career is really about connections. And that's the first C, is reach out to your connections. There was recently a study, and it says that 70% of all jobs are filled by networking. So there's been many times in my career where maybe a candidate didn't have all of the qualifications, but if I got a really good reference or someone that I really trusted, or maybe somebody internal, they would have a higher chance of getting an interview because of that connection, right? Versus someone that I have no idea who they are and they don't meet all of the qualifications, or maybe they do, but they're just not the best candidate. So really it's about reaching out to your connections, letting people know that you're out in the job market, that you're looking for a job. And, that will definitely get your foot in the door a lot quicker than, just being another random resume that HR professionals and recruiters have to sort through. There's hundreds and thousands that they sort through, that we have to sort through every day. I would say the other thing as far as connections, right, is LinkedIn, but not only LinkedIn, update your social media profiles to where, if I'm an HR professional and I come look at your social media profile, it's acceptable, So even things that you post on social media, like if you want a reputable job, you just have to be really careful about your online presence, whether you're looking for a job or not. It's your reputation. And one thing that I've definitely learned over the years is your reputation is something that you can never get back, right? It's you could have been terrible 10 years ago and you're a completely different person, but if all that person knows you from is just that moment of your life, or maybe just from your social media presence, you can never get your reputation back. So it's really important that your social media presence and your network, that you keep it very professional, respectable.
Do you recommend, like, for Facebook, like changing your Facebook name possibly so that a potential employer couldn't find you? Because I just feel like sometimes with Facebook, right, it's a little bit more lax than say like a LinkedIn. And so what are your thoughts on that?
What a great
Great
question.
question.
That's a great question. I would say I think it's very personal, right? Like, I think it's very personal because, I think that's the great thing about Facebook, right? Is you can goof off, you can have fun, you can laugh, you can joke, right? So that's the really great thing about Facebook. So, like, if you don't want your employer to find you, I would say definitely change your name, but I think it's a very personal decision to make. I have a lot of family and friends who I can't even find them half the time because I don't know what their Facebook
Right.
name is. But a lot of them do that because of their profession as well. I guess it's also really important that you can separate work and, your personal life. However, I think it just depends. Like if you're a little bit too goofy and may not be in your best interest for work, I would definitely say use a different name.
Yeah, so we have a comment here, and Yang, who is an employer, he says, "I check my employees' Facebook." And so do you do that, or does somebody in your team do y'all scour their social media and just kind of look at it before?
100%. So if you're out there looking for a job, you always just have to be ready and know that there are employers looking at your Facebook profile. That's why I say keep it professional, unless you have your fake name.
But can people, I don't remember, but on Facebook, couldn't people search you by your email address too?
Yeah, I believe so. Yes, and your phone number.
That's
Yeah.
good to know. I
So
didn't know
check your
that.
settings, you guys.
So then on the opposite, I feel like I'm echoing. Am I echoing? Okay. I feel like on the opposite spectrum of that, like what would you recommend people put on their LinkedIn to stand out?
Uh, so I would say have a professional picture. Some other things I would say is get recommendations. Those are always good, especially if it's from like maybe a previous boss or somebody with a great reputation or a great, job title. I would also say list your accomplishments, right? Just not your job duties. Um, and I think those are some really key things to have on your profile. And list relevant data, like whatever job you're looking for, like put relevant information, so make sure it's updated.
Okay, so we talked about connection. Did you want to go into competence, or do you have stuff to add for the connection?
So I would say like getting your foot in the door. I would say something else that is really, really important, right? Is um, making sure that you're competent, right? So I guess let me give you an example of that. So on your resume, recruiters take 7 seconds or less to look at resumes, right? Especially if you've been doing it for a long time. Like if you're a hiring manager, you don't recruit much. Of course, it's going to take them a lot longer. But for the most part, recruiters who do it every day, it's very easy for us to go through resumes, right? And just quickly scan, right? And there's like key experiences. If you're not even in the ballpark, like nobody's going to waste their time. So it's 7 seconds. So make sure that the dream job or the job that you're aiming for, that your resume really reflects that skill set, right? And if it doesn't, then my second recommendation, right, about getting the right level of competency and the capability that you need to do the job, because if you don't have that, you're probably not going to get an interview at all. So, of course, like in my career, thank God I had really great mentors, right? So if you don't have the skill set, find a mentor to really help you grow your skill set. And, or not only that, right? We have to really be able to use our resources, right? So I would say the only resource better than the Bible to me, right, is Google, YouTube. Like there's so much information out there. If you don't have the skill set, go learn it, right? And if you're young or if you have time, go get an internship. I'm sure there's plenty of people that are very happy for you to work for free. So if you really want that job, you have to do what others aren't willing to do. Is spend time and shadow a mentor, get an internship. There's nothing like experience. Yeah, so anyway, I would say those are really, really important.
How do you even find a mentor? I think that when you're maybe like in school, you might find an advisor or someone like that. But let's say that you are out in the field now working and maybe you're not necessarily loving where you're at, or have somebody who can mentor you. How would you go about finding a good mentor?
So I think that you have to be very vocal and also very accountable for your own growth. So like if you want to be in a certain field, you have to go out and seek those people. Like if there's not somebody readily available to mentor you, I was so fortunate and grateful. Like in my career, I had people who like took me under their wing and like I was really able to learn from, but also I wasn't shy about asking, So like if you're young and you just haven't had the exposure yet, especially for someone like me, and I'm sure like many of you that are listening, right? So, I mean, my parents, of course, your parents, we're first generation American, right? So my mom was a farmer, right? So everything I kind of had to learn in the business world, in a sense, I had to learn on my own. Thank God I had great mentors to teach me and to show me. But I also wasn't shy about reaching out. I remember being like 20 years old, like working in accounts payable in an office trying to get through college, right? And I set up a meeting with the VP of HR because, I wanted his advice, so you can't be shy about your growth, right? And your your journey and your future, And so I would say definitely don't be afraid to reach out to people. I mean, honestly, I was probably, I don't know, in my early 20s, trying to get through college. And he set up a meeting for me to meet with like every executive in the company. It was amazing, just so that I could um, learn about the different roles in an organization because I had no idea. I mean, my parents, like they're not, in the business world, right? They grew up being farmers. And so I think even more so, right? Because for us, we don't have that exposure, right? As a first generation American, it's really important that we take a hold of our future, and we cannot be afraid to ask, for guidance, because there's plenty of great people out there that are willing to help and to mentor.
Yeah, I was gonna say that I think that a lot of people nowadays, at least I think for me, um, back when you're like in a entry level position, I don't think people know or realize to pull up a org chart for your organization and see kind of like the path of how you can kind of get to where you are, like have a vision of where you want to go, pull up that organizational chart and start looking at how can you connect with these individuals and ask questions. I think that didn't really start happening for me till about like 6 years ago was when I realized I can actually do that. So
Yeah.
so a learning lesson for all of you listening, like if you are not in a position where you want to be and you know that there is something more and you want to stay within your organization, I feel like that helped me a lot. So
And you're certainly not alone in that. I
mhm,
think many of us struggle with that, right?
yeah,
Because we didn't have somebody at home, teaching us or talking to us about like these kind of things, and so a lot of it we really had to learn on our own. So
mhm.
you're definitely not alone in that. And so that's why I'm really glad that uh, you ladies have this great show where people can really learn about what they can really do to
Yeah,
further their career and their future.
There's
yeah,
definitely a great network I feel like now that we've had, a lot of more folks going to college and like rising up in their career, like just within the Hmong community, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that, if you just reach out, look them up on LinkedIn, there's a Hmong professional group that's on there. And so I think if it's kind of nerve wracking to like try to reach out to, like a white person, I think there's certainly, trying to create that connection with a Hmong person so that you kind of get that. But, I definitely feel like if you find like very established professionals, like they also want to give back. And I
Hmm.
feel like that was what happened in your case, Payne, where you had somebody that was like, oh my gosh, like this person wants to learn that and I want to give back and help this person. And so I think it's scary and you might feel like they might say no, but what's the worst that can happen, right? If you don't ask, then you don't know.
100%. And most people are like very, very willing to help. We just have to be brave enough to ask.
there was a question on here that I want to make sure we ask because, and I say this because I've been asked to sit on an interview panel for one of our executive director position, and I'm looking at resumes, because they're already like past the HR phase. So we're now like looking at the resumes to interview. And I like this question because I honestly want to know your opinion, Pang. What is the industry standard nowadays for resumes? One page versus multiple page resumes. What's your opinion on that?
So, resumes definitely need to be 1 to 2 pages, in my opinion. But the most important part about resumes to me is the substance, right? So
Mhm.
list information that is relevant, right? You want to list accomplishments and not just job duties, right? So you don't want to list a role that you had in high school that is not even relevant to, the job that you're applying for, right? So um, list really relevant information, fill in the gaps where you can. So like as someone going through a resume, they don't have to guess. I've had friends, for example, who maybe they just stayed at a job, or maybe it was a contractor job, for 6 months or a year, and it was a very short tenure, things like that, like fill in the gaps so that I don't have to assume that you're a job hopper or whatever the case might be, right? So for like example, in that instance, I told my friend, like, list out that it was a contract job, or the reason why you left, so that they don't think that you're just a job hopper, or whatever the case might be. But my recommendation is, don't make it any longer than you need it to be.
Does formatting matter, or does it kind of get scrapped anyways in just the bare bones? Because sometimes I've seen like really aesthetically pleasing resumes that attracts my attention, but then sometimes I see like very basic too. And so, in your opinion, does the formatting matter?
I think it does matter to some people, but as a recruiter, like for me, I'm more concerned about the substance, right? And what their capabilities are, what their skill sets are. But when it kind of gets down to the hiring managers, because they don't see resumes all the time, formatting does matter. I mean, you want it to be bulleted. You want it to be easy to read. You want it to be a format, where it's not like in calligraphy or something crazy, right? Where it's like very easy to read, And so I would say, I mean, as far as that, from that perspective, it does matter. But I would be more concerned about the substance, granted that I can read it and it's legible, and, things like that.
Yeah. All right. So we've been talking about kind of like the whole before the interview process. And so I think like I want to move on to like during the interview process. So like during the interview, what are some things that people can do to I don't know, make themselves stand out? Are there things that people really shouldn't say?
I'm sorry, you guys, I'm trying to get over a cough.
That's it.
Um, okay, so during the interview, so I think we kind of missed a lot of information, probably, that I have not gone over, like, even before the interview. But during the interview, I think one of the most important things, right? Because there's a lot of things that I believe you need to do before the interview, so that you are prepared for the interview, right? So I guess I'll just kind of go over those. And that has to do with your capability, your competency level, your skill set, right? Um, and this is one of my recommendations. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to before the interview, because I do think that this is really important, right? Is you have, like, not only your competency level, but your confidence, right, really needs to come through during the interview. The only way that your confidence is going to come through during the interview is if you're prepared for the interview, right? That means a couple of things. Either I've done the job so much, right, and for so long, that I might not have to practice as much for an interview, right? But I always, even if you don't have to practice as hard, I always recommend practicing for an interview, so that during the interview, you're very confident, right? And exactly what you're going to say. And so one of my recommendations is, of course, to be prepared, to practice, right? So practice makes perfect. And, it goes back to my favorite quote: luck is when opportunity meets preparation, right? And so use flashcards. That's one of my recommendations, is use flashcards. You can go on Google, right? You can get 50 to 100 most common interview questions. Use those flashcards and answer those questions based on the job that you are applying for and that you want, right? So there's a method, right, of interviewing where really all interviewers are looking for. And, you know, we all know that really the best way to predict future behavior is really to look at past behavior, right? And so, really, what you want to do is dig into your past experience when you're going through the interview process. And there's a method called STAR method. Some of you may or may not be familiar with it, but it's the STAR method of answering questions, which is when an interviewer asks you a question, you're going to give them a situation or a real life example, a scenario that you've gone through. You're going to give them the task, right? You're going to describe the responsibility that you had in that situation. You're going to give them the action that you took, right? Explain the steps that you took to address that situation or that scenario. And then you're going to give them the result, which is you're going to share the positive outcome of your actions that you achieved. So that's what I always recommend. In addition, you want to practice so that you don't talk too much or too short, or maybe you don't answer the question completely. Because when you're answering an interview question, it should really only be 2 to 2.5 minutes long. Honestly, after that, like, you've lost the interviewer, but that's with anybody, right? Like, you don't want to listen to somebody just ramble on and on and on, right? So be clear, be concise, get to the point. So I guess a part of that is also communication, confidence, competency, right? So it really falls into all three of those categories when you're doing that, right? So I would say one other thing that is super, super important during the interview, right, is I'm going to touch on this next C, which is connection, right? So one of the most important factors that no one talks about during an interview is really cultural fit. So you may have all the skill set in the world, all the experience, you've done the job somewhere else. But if I feel like you don't fit into the culture and I'm looking for that literally in the first 3 to 5 minutes, that's what I'm looking for more so than even your skill set. Because if you don't fit into the organization, it's never going to work. And so cultural fit, right? What does that really mean? I mean, I guess it means a lot of things, but simply put, it's like, do I even like you enough to like just talk to you on a day-to-day basis? Like, I spend so much time at work, like I want to like who I'm working with, and that's just a very simple version of it, right? Is like, I want to feel like I can walk up to you and ask you a question, and we can work together, we can go to lunch, right? Maybe we can even be friends, right? So people are happiest at work when they feel like they have friends at work, and so that's a really important element when it comes to like during the interview, is that connection. Are you connecting with them? One other thing that I'm going to talk about as far as connection, right, is that's really, really important, is really from the minute that you wake up and you know that it's time for the interview, right? The day of the interview, it really matters. Everything matters from that point on. And what do I mean by that? Like, when you wake up, are you groomed? Like, do you look sharp? Because I mean, that also has a lot to do with connection. So, like, from the minute you wake up, you get in your car, like, is your car clean? Don't show up and your car is like filthy, right? Because I don't want to work with the slob, you know? So I guess just to give you guys a funny story, right? Like, one time there was a guy that interviewed, and he interviewed pretty well, right? However, the owners of the company, he flicked a cigarette on his way out, and they were like, nope, never gonna work here, right? So, like, pay attention to stuff like that. Like, when you meet the receptionist, like, are you connecting with them? Like, you have to be kind to everybody there, because I guarantee you, like, the minute you leave, if you're like super nice, or if you're not nice, the receptionist is going to come into my office, or the hiring manager's office, or the recruiter's office, and they're gonna say, like, ooh, I don't want to work with that person, or, oh my gosh, they were so great, like, when are you bringing them back? Like all of those little things matter when it comes to connection, um, because cultural fit is something that might be a little bit intangible, but it's one of the most important things when it comes to deciding whether or not I'm going to hire this person.
We have a quick question here on cultural fit. And so Jennifer asked, question on cultural fit versus cultural, is that ad? Which do you think is more important, especially when DEI is at the forefront of candidates' minds? And I know DEI work is like for our nonprofit, we've been really focused on this as well. But I mean, I think cultural fit is probably less so about someone's actual cultural background and probably more on like that, what you're saying, the personality fit and how they would fit inside the organization without like, prejudice against their actual ethnicity and backgrounds and stuff like that.
Yes, exactly. Right. Exactly. So when I talk about cultural fit, I'm really not talking about diversity, inclusion. Those aren't the things that I'm really talking about. Right. So, for example, I've worked at a lot of different organizations, and every culture feels kind of different. Right. And I would say, even for me, when I've been in organizations where it just was not a cultural fit, like it didn't, like I was not happy there, like it didn't work out. So, for example, let me give you an example of cultural fit, right? So, like if you work for like a really large organization, right? And the way of thinking is just like usually when you work for a large organization, there's more approvals or there's several people involved in the decision, where like if you work for a small company, a lot of times the sole decision maker is the owner, right? And so if I'm hiring somebody and I feel like um, maybe they want to make the decisions, I'm like, they're probably not going to be a good cultural fit, right? Like they're not going to fit into like the culture of this organization, right? So that's just an example of the kind of cultural fit that I'm talking about.
So speaking of like interviews, um obviously there's a difference when we talk about like one-on-one versus a panel interview. So what are some good things for candidates to do for a one-on-one versus a panel? Like how should they prepare themselves for the different types of interviews?
So I would say a purpose of a panel interview is usually there's a couple of things I think why companies choose to do panel interviews. So one is it's probably of course due to the position, right? Like if you're going to touch a lot of people in that role, usually I'm going to do a panel interview for that position, right? Because I want to know that you're able to interact comfortably in that type of environment, right? So you can communicate to a large group of people comfortably. And like I said, culturally, you're going to fit in. Also, in that type of interview, like people are going to come to you really quick with questions. They want to know probably how you're going to handle like that kind of pressure, or if you can think quickly on your feet, right? Because it probably matters in that position, and that's why the interview is being conducted in that way, right? And so those are things that. So I guess some pointers for things like that is be very personable, right? Make sure you're very personable. Remember names. I would say find out like who you're going to be interviewing with prior to the interview. That's really important. But also treat everyone respectfully, right? Because everyone in the room, obviously, there's a reason why they're in the room. Like this is probably a role where you're going to work with like maybe an admin person all the way to the executive level, right? And so they want to know that you are able to interact with all levels of the organization, and so that's why it's likely why there's a panel interview. The other thing, honestly, is a lot of times they just want to save time, and so it's just a lot easier to do a panel interview. But you definitely have to be very comfortable, right? And so I guess one thing that I can recommend for people who may not be very comfortable, right? I guess at one point in my life, I was a little bit more, I guess, shy or not as comfortable around a lot of people, right? Early on in your career, maybe you just haven't really developed that skill set yet. Like, go out and just practice small talk, right? Read books about small talk. Do research on how to have small talk, right? Because small talk is like just really important. I remember early on in my career, like I said, I had really great mentors. My really great mentor, one of my really great mentors, gave me a book about just being comfortable having small talk. And just like approaching someone and giving eye contact and reaching out to give them a handshake, right? Like those are just gestures where you just seem very confident and very comfortable in just a panel or a room full of people or working with different levels of the organization, and so I would definitely recommend that
There's so
for someone.
there's so much value in small talk, yo. I feel like that's
Yeah.
where the connection can really happen too, is like just those small, like, short conversation where people automatically like perk up and they feel like, oh, like I could like this person, kind of like what you were saying, right? Like,
Mhm.
as I'm having small talk, and are we like jiving, or are we completely just like where you just like, I can't even talk with this person. I don't talk to this
Right.
person.
Yeah. Yeah, you can definitely figure out like so much about someone.
Do you, have you had, just off the top of your head, have you had anybody during an interview where you've just been like super amazed, like just like, wow, this is an amazing candidate, and like what was that one thing or two thing that they did during the interview that really made them stand out?
Oh, I would say definitely. I mean, many times, like when you do like so many interviews, and you really understand like what that job is looking for, what that hiring manager is looking for, and what that job requires, right? Like when you have done this for so long, like it's very easy right away almost to know when you have a really great candidate, right? And I would say like a very big thing, of course, like I said, the big C is like they're competent, right? They're capable of doing the job. But outside of that is someone who just has like great enthusiasm. Like energy is so important, like having the right energy is so important. Like literally one person can change the energy of a room, right? And so I would say even in an interview, right, like how do you get your energy level up? um, you know I personally think there's like ways, right, like before an interview where you can really work on getting your energy level up so your enthusiasm is up. And I guess some recommendations that I have. This was really funny, actually. I was kind of thinking about this like before I came on. And I remember like going into an interview. This was early on in my career. I was probably, I don't know, 26 or something, and it was a Fortune 500 company, right, that I was interviewing for, and it was an all-day interview. And literally, I walked in, and there was like a herd of like very, very experienced HR professionals, like in their 40s and 50s and 30s, and like talk about intimidating, right? Like for a 26-year-old, but one of the things that I did, and this is I probably shouldn't even admit to this, but you have to do things that really get your energy level up. So, like, uh, one, get a hype song, like, do you have a hype song? Like, get a song that just gets your energy level up before the interview. Like, sit and, well, now that I've gotten older, like, sit and meditate, right? Positive affirmations, say a prayer. Maybe there's just, I don't know, maybe a video or a person that really like inspires you, or someone that you hope to be like, or, you know, see yourself in that position. I would say do all of those things to get yourself in the right energy and mindset and enthusiasm before an interview, because to me, like, enthusiasm just goes such a long way.
I love that because definitely energy, when I interview, it's like, I work in finance, and so I know it's a dry a dry
Yeah.
field, but, I feel like but I'm really passionate about finance and reporting and accounting, and so it's like I want people who want to, come and do the work and love it and want to understand it and want to provide that admin support, and so, that really matters, and it's like if you come in and you're already looking drained and like you don't
Yeah.
wanna
Oh
be
my
there, it's like,
gosh. Yeah.
oh.
Yeah.
Love it. There are some questions in the comment section, but I think we should probably move on because we're short on time. So, so I think with that said, let's say you are done with the interview, you did a good job, or at least you think you did, you felt like you rocked it, you went in confident, you had all the competencies of what the recs are for the job. So how do you kind of like solidify that, right? After the interview, what are some things that you can do to ensure that you did stand out, that you have the last couple of things you need to figure out and do before they make their decision?
Hmm. Um, so so here's what I would say about that, right? Like, usually by the time that you get to that point, the interviewers are either 100% sure, or, every once in a while there'll be like two candidates where I'm just not 100% sure, right?
Mhm.
So I think where it really makes a difference is where it could go either way with either candidate, right? But if you're like, I know who I'm going to hire, then it really won't make a difference what you do if they already kind of know who they're going to hire. But when it makes a huge difference is when they're really not sure who they're going to hire yet, right? And so everyone knows, right? Follow up with a thank you note. Um, uh, so I would say keep your thank you note like very short, very brief, and try to remember some like things that the interviewer brought up that were significant or important to them, right? And so don't just like a plain thank you letter, like telling them about how great you are again, right? Because they've already kind of heard everything, right? So kind of reiterate some points that are important to them. I would say, like, in smaller organizations, some things that I guess were a little bit memorable was I remember one time someone sent a cookie cake.
Hmm.
One time there was someone who sent flowers, and actually we weren't 100% sure about her, but it was a private company, and so the owners really liked that personal touch, right?
Yeah.
And so we ended up hiring her.
Hmm.
And so I think it really matters when they're not 100% sure, right? They like you, but they're not 100% sure. Maybe they want to see other candidates. But I think those, I guess, like very little touches, but significant touches matter, um, after the interview.
There's
Yeah.
this question that, I is it I don't know if it's Izu but, can you respond to skills and experience versus education?
I'm sorry, excuse me. I got the worst cough I'm trying to get rid of. Okay, so skills and experience versus education, right? So there's certain jobs that you will need an education for. Obviously, we don't want a doctor without an education, right? We
Yeah.
don't want somebody like in a specialized field without an education, right? Uh, like a, a lot of finance or accounting jobs or like very specific jobs, like they should have an education for, right? That's like very technical. um However, um when it comes to skills and experience, really, to me, there's no better teacher than skills or experience. But in some roles, you just won't get those skills and experience without the education. right? And so it varies by role. But in some cases, many cases, right, you're not going to get the skills or the experience without the education. So like if there is a role or a job that needs the education, you have to go out and get the education, the certifications, right? Before you can get the skills and experience. And if you have the education and you don't have the skills and experience, like I said before, get a mentor, get an internship. That's how you get your foot in the door. Work with your connections.
So I do want to go into like any HR horror stories, anything that you've seen that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that this person does not know this, or like,
do this.
what in the world? Maybe you can share some of those so that we can all know what not to do.
You know what? There's so many that they almost become normal, so I kind of forget. So maybe I'll just share something that is like very basic and maybe a little bit funny. But I remember this is so bad, y'all. Like HR people and recruiters can be so judgy. But I remember one time interviewing this girl, and her handshake was just so weird, right? And honestly, I just like, we interviewed her, and then we did our round table. So usually I'll do like a round table after the interview with all the other interviewers or hiring manager or, other people who interviewed them. And we all looked at each other and we're like, her handshake, like it was so weird, and so I was reading just about like the different funny handshakes, and I think I can just share that with y'all. But here's some so obviously a good handshake, right, needs to be very firm, give them eye contact, and let go, right? So a handshake should really only be 2 seconds. Obviously, we're in COVID times, and so I think this is like a very good topic to talk about since we're in COVID times. I would say follow the lead of the interviewer. Some of you may not feel comfortable shaking hands because of COVID. However, I do say follow the lead of the interviewer. If they reach out and shake your hand, I'm sorry, use sanitizer after, but people are doing other things like fist bumps and elbow bumps and whatever. I would say also, sorry, excuse me. One of the funniest things that I had happen, and maybe it wasn't so funny, but I didn't even know how to respond, was I actually had somebody bow to me once. And I was like, this was pre-COVID. And they like actually bowed to me, and I was like, oh my God, what do I do? And why are they doing that? And so that was totally not appropriate. So anyway, all of that to say, follow the lead of the person doing the interview. But these are some really funny things, funny handshakes, right? So there's like aggressive, I'm sorry, this cough, aggressive handshakes, right? So the dominant handshake is where you place your palm downward. And then there's the bone crusher where you're like just squeezing their hand. And then there's the handshake where someone just like comes in way too close, right? Like there's no personal space. And then there's like passive handshakes, right? Where I'm sorry, where their hands are just like super limp. Or like the finger handshake, right? Where they just give you fingers. And then there's like the cold, clammy handshake, right? Where their hands are just like super clammy. This cough has been going on for 3 weeks. I swear I don't have COVID. And then there's the handshake where like there's no eye contact. And then there's also the handshake where they just completely miss your hands, right? And then there's the handshake where it's just like way too long, right? And so when it comes to like handshakes and gestures, definitely follow the lead of the interviewer in 2 to 3 seconds. That's all you need. So like those things matter so much, because it's definitely like a first impression, and people make first impressions within a second, right? And the first thing you do is shake somebody's hand, and if it's weird, like erasing a first impression is almost impossible to do. I think there was a study or something like you have to meet somebody like 10 or 20 positive experiences before they do away with that first impression, So definitely practice your handshake, because I would say it's kind of a horror when people don't properly greet.
How about smell?
Thank God I haven't had too many of those. But definitely freshen up, shower, groom, wake up. When you wake up, make sure you smell good, you look good. And I would also say, like, just when it comes to grooming, as far as dress code, because we do live in an environment where things are pretty relaxed now. Like back when I was younger, right, and just starting in my career, people were still wearing suits to all interviews. I always say dress one tier above the person you're interviewing with, right? So if it's like a manufacturing place and people wear jeans, wear khakis, and a collar shirt, right? So dress like one tier above whoever you're interviewing with. But like if you're in a professional office environment, like business casual at the very least. So anyway,
So now
I
that
still definitely believe in looking sharp.
So now that we're like in the times of COVID, there's a lot of virtual interviews that are happening. And so how do you stand out and prepare for a virtual interview versus, what we're so used to, which is in person?
That's a really great question as well. Always be ready for a virtual interview, especially these days, right? So like if your resume is out there, you need to be ready to interview, whether it's virtually or in person. Always be ready. Make sure that your laptop works, your camera works. Like just having technical difficulties like that, honestly, like I'm just like, this person can't even get their like computer together. Like, why would I want to hire them, right? Like, get all those things together. And when you're interviewing, even though it's via Zoom, make sure you look like just as good as if you're going to interview in person. So I would say all of those things still apply.
Yeah, I had I interviewed someone this week virtually, and there was technical issues, and so I was pretty forgiving, but she was pretty flustered at during the interview from all of that technical issues. And so I think, yeah, definitely making sure that your video and even the lighting, right, that
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like I because we're already losing that human interaction touch. Like I just want to at least see the person and be able to talk to them and see how they are.
And like interviewers are on time limits, right? And so like if technologically you're not set up, like for example, there's certain things that only use certain applications, right? When they send you the link, test it out before you get on the interview. Like don't wait till the last second. Oh my gosh, I don't have Google Chrome and this requires Google Chrome. You know what I mean? That was almost me tonight, by the way. So make sure that you're testing all of those things out. Show up early. Like don't show up like right when it starts, because anything can happen. We all know that. Like give yourself time to, like, if you need to go to the coffee shop or your friend's house or whatever, like give yourself time to do that. Yeah.
And then I do want to take this. We had a question from when we did the post on Facebook, and I do want to ask Katie Zhang's question. And she says, am I echoing? Do you have the question? Olivia, will you ask the question?
Yeah. So Katie Zhang had I feel like I'm echoing too, but so Katie Zhang when we had put the post about your bio, she really wanted us to ask you this question, and it states, I'm an HR staffing position that is considered level 1 for a year now. I'd love to grow to a level 3. If an opportunity comes and I meet all requirements for level 3, should I consider level 3 knowing I'll skip over a whole step level? I always get afraid of what if I should have learned more before growing so fast. Thank you.
So the way that I would answer this question, right, is closed mouths don't get fed, right? And so you always have to be willing and open to talk to your boss about future opportunities, right? Especially if you really want to grow in your career, you really need to set a recurring time with your boss, at least, once a month. I would say once a month, right? To talk about like future opportunities that are available, right? Like ask them like, what's the gap in my skill set to get to the next level, right? And talk to them about your interest in growing and ask them what you need to work on. Now, when you get into that meeting, a couple of things that I would recommend, right, before you ask for that type of meeting, because I've had people come to me and sometimes I'm like, is this person like, are they not self-aware? Like they're not even completing their job on time. They're not even doing all of their duties. It's like, be very self-aware before you ask for that kind of meeting, because bosses are busy, and so and it's okay to ask for that type of meeting, but like just be very self-aware before you walk into that meeting, right? Because you may get your feelings hurt, right? And so after being self-aware, the other thing that I would say is, if you feel like you have all of the capabilities, all of the skill sets, you express your interest and they kind of tell you like there's no opportunity available. Honestly, for me, at that point, you also need to be ready to start looking for another job, because I would say there were times in my career, there was a time in my career, it was a very critical time in my career where I did this. I went into my boss's office. I mean, I was like the person of the year for this and that and the other. And like, I got great reviews and my peers loved me. And I was doing everything and then some in my role, right? And I worked in an organization at that time where there just wasn't a lot of growth opportunities. Like people have been there. It was a great company, great organization, but people have been there for 20 years and nobody was leaving and they weren't opening up positions and they kept it really lean, right? They ran the organization really lean, right? You're run into situations like that. But at that point in my career, I had to make a decision. It was the best decision I ever made. It was a great company. I was doing great. I loved it. It was a great job. Loved the people I worked with. All the formula for, a great job. However, sometimes you really have to think about yourself, because very few times where you'll get like a huge pay increase, and I remember taking that jump. It was the best thing I ever did, because it really elevated me, from like a manager type level position to like, for the first time, making six figures in my career, but be ready to make those decisions, but also be very self-aware of where you really sit as far as your capabilities.
Yeah, I would just want to add, like, don't be, I mean, and maybe this is a little bit selfish, and it shows the level of loyalty that we have compared to, like back in the days, right? When people would stay with the same companies for like 20 plus years. And I definitely feel like you have to be in charge of your career and you have to know when to make a move and not be so loyal that you're missing opportunities that are out there for you, because, you are at the end of the day replaceable. And so you really have to seek out opportunities for yourself, because, if you're a great employee, people are going to want you there forever, but you might be missing better opportunities, better work-life balance, just better jobs that are out there.
Yeah, but I would also say as well, like on the other hand, right? Sometimes, like, it's about being self-aware, right? Sometimes you do need to be patient, right? So like if you go in and your boss is like, hey, be patient, here's what you need to work on, and it's a great organization. I mean, it's worth it to stay as well, right? And so, those are things that you just really have to weigh out. But of course all of those situations are very personal and very different.
What about, so I want to ask you a question, Payne, because I felt like I made this decision and it has been the best decision I've made in my career. But then I always do think back, like, what would happen if I stayed? So
Mhm.
so it was kind of in that scenario where I feel like I was the person doing a lot. I did everything. I pretty much I did like five people's job, right? But when it came for the promotion, they weren't able to give me the pay that I wanted, which I think really mattered to me, because if I'm not making even the max amount of what someone below me made at their top tier, um, I was just doing too much to get paid that amount. So I didn't take it and I moved on to something else. Like, how, in your opinion, if people ever kind of go through this like dilemma, like what would you recommend for them? Because you talk about patience. So, like, what if you felt like your managers weren't really fighting for you to get that pay, or like from HR, like how do you negotiate that to make a really strong case?
Hmm. um, so I guess your question is, like, when should we make that decision?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, like just
Yeah.
deciding
So.
it's like you made that right decision, right? Because
Mhm.
you talk about like being patient and they tell you, yes, like this is an opportunity for you. It's great, it's coming. And then when it does come, it's not like what you expected. Like they weren't able to give you the pay that you wanted.
Yeah, I think that one thing that I've learned definitely in my career, right, is, of course, like I said, self-awareness, but, I love this word, which is like, are you being authentic, to yourself, right?
Right.
So the times in my career where, like, I really wasn't being like my most authentic self, right? Um, and so for me, like, being very authentic in whatever you do, right, is like, are my gifts being utilized where I'm at? Do I feel appreciated, right? Am I valued? Um, and anytime where I felt like I wasn't being authentic in how I felt, right? So maybe I wasn't able to be honest, right? When I'm at work, because of whatever. Maybe I didn't have a great boss, right? Or maybe, I'm just not happy with the role that I'm doing anymore, right? But I feel like if I can't be really authentic and honest with what I want, and my gifts are not being used, because there have, like, when I think about the times where I was really unhappy in my career, was I settled because I wasn't being honest with myself. I settled because I wasn't, I didn't really want, I wasn't happy with this job, but it paid the bills, or I made a lot of money, or whatever it was. Or I wasn't being honest with myself that my boss, I just didn't like them. Like, they weren't helping me grow. They weren't using my gifts, right? And or I was being overworked and undervalued, right? And so I wasn't being authentic, and I probably stayed because I was comfortable, or I was making a lot of money, right? And I think anytime where we're not authentic and true to ourselves and the value and the gifts that we bring into with the people around us and the world, I think that's when it's time to leave, and I think though that's such a tough question because most people don't want to face it because it's just easier a lot of times to just stay and be comfortable, right? But I think just this idea of being authentic and true to your talents and your gifts and your value, like there has to be a time where money just can't make up for that, right? Or being comfortable just can't make up for that. And I think that's when we have to make the decision to leave. And anytime I didn't, I wasn't happy, you know? And our gifts and what we have to offer the world is just way too important to stay somewhere where it's not being utilized or appreciated. So that's when it's time to leave.
I love that because
Yeah.
work itself, I mean, we work so much where there's, so many hours of the day, and it's like, at the end of the day, like, like the money is great, but if you're not happy,
Mhm.
if every Sunday you're kind of going, like, oh, I don't want to go to work, or the night before, or you have bad bosses. I mean, I've definitely been in, the workplace where I felt like I was bullied, or
Yeah.
I was not wanting to go to work, and that was
Oh, it's
really
not fun.
miserable. Yeah, it was absolutely miserable, and I really hated my life at that point. And so, yeah, it's definitely important to kind of assess what, just because it looks great and it sounds great,
Mhm.
doesn't mean that it's what you want to. And so when you're being interviewed, I think it's important to also interview that company and those people and see if you actually
Exactly.
want to go
Yep.
there and be there.
100%.
Yeah.
So we are past the hour, and there's just so much. I feel like there's so much more things that like. I could just keep listening to you. Like I just want to listen to you talk all night long. But we are past the hour, and so just one last question: is there any last thing that you just want to let our audience know about just standing out? And then if you can also let us know how to connect with you, that would be great.
I guess one of the things that I really didn't touch on, right, was just building character, right? Before we ever, before we land that dream job or that job we always wanted, I remember like, there were many times early on in my career, oh, if I was a VP, I would do this, or if I was that, I would do this. But when you get into those type of executive roles, or maybe even a different role that you really want, there's a lot of things that you probably just don't know about the role, right? And so when you see very successful people, just not in the corporate world, but just in general, like there's so much character building that had to be done before that person is in that place that they are. So when you see someone that is very successful or appears very successful, whatever the case might be, there was definitely a lot of character building that had to be done before they were in that position, right? And so as you go through your career, 90% of the working population are employed, or are employed or employees of an organization, right? And so, as you go through your career, and if you want to progress in your career, I would say work on your character, and it will take you into whatever your dream position is. Like when I look back, and I wanted to be a VP and I was 25 years old, or whatever the case might be, right? Uh, but like I look back and I'm like, oh, I had so much character building and so much emotional maturity that I needed to do before I could ever be in that role or successful in that role. I guess, so I just really encourage everyone, right? To really work on your inner self so that you can get to where you want to be, whether it's like being truly committed to something, or your work ethic, or just having courage, or following through, or being more caring, or being a better listener, or having humility, right? Because to be in a leadership position, what people don't tell you is you have to have so much humility, um, and be able to have very thick skin and be a problem solver, right? So don't be positive, be enthusiastic, be a leader, be able to delegate, whatever those character building things are. um, you know, I guess my kind of last words is work on that, because it's important, to where you want to go for your future. And if you want to reach out to me, you can email me. My email is heupang@gmail.com, heupang@gmail.com. I actually get quite a bit of like just Facebook inquiries, questions, that people have just about, sometimes there's like workplace drama, or they're having some problems with somebody at work or their boss or whatever. I try to answer, everybody actually. I am pretty busy though. I will say that I'm working on building a couple businesses. And so I am pretty busy, but I will say this, you know, uh, so many people gave back to me in my career. And so, any listeners out there, if they would like me to coach or mentor them for free, I will take on one person that I will coach or mentor, that is currently listening right now to all that talk. You guys can email me. I really want to mentor someone who who I feel like I can really help, and maybe there's like really good connection. Like I'm not going to just mentor anybody because I am somewhat limited on time as well. But I will take on someone who is listening to this show to mentor, because so many people have poured into my life, and I'm super super grateful. So if there's someone out there that is interested, shoot me an email and I'll kind of take a look and get back to everyone like within the next week or two. And I can definitely start that sometime in February.
Wow, that is amazing. Thank you so much.
Yes,
So,
thank
yeah,
you.
please shoot her an email if you would like some mentorship. I know that there were, at the beginning, there were some folks when we talked briefly about mentoring that really wanted that mentorship from you. And so thank you so much for giving that to one of our listeners. Again, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Again, we know you're super busy and you just have a wealth of knowledge. Just as you're talking, I'm just like, oh my goodness, like I wish I had all of this when I was younger and starting my career. I love the 5 C's that you talked about: connection, competence, confident, communication, character. I think those are things that are easy to remember and things that we can all take away. Also, about the STAR technique, and that's situation, task, action, results. A great way to really answer those interview questions. And just thank you so much for all of the tips. And thank you everyone for being with us tonight and for all of your comments. I know we did not get to all of the questions. But hopefully Payne will have some time in the future that we can bring her back, because everyone is just loving this session, and me included. Such great advice. And so, of course, thank you again for being with us tonight. We have a great episode in 2 weeks that we will be posting up soon. And here at All That Talk, we believe that conversations drive change, and change starts with you. And so we will see you all next time. Have a good night.
All right, good night. Thank you, ladies, so much for having me. And I really appreciate everything that you guys are doing for the community. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Thank you.
Happy New Year. God bless.
Bye.
Bye.